In this video, we're going to build a simple password generator. So this is what we're going to build. We're going to have this range input here. We can slide it to set the length. And you notice here at the top, if we're above a certain amount, it'll be green. If we go to a lower amount, it'll be yellow. And then it'll go to red if we're at a very low length of a password. So this will give you kind of like a strength sort of meter, I guess, from weak, medium, into strong. With a max of 64. And we have some options here. You can include symbols, or you can include similar characters, O's and zeros, ones and L's, twos and Z's, and those sorts of things. So we click on some things here, and we click generate, and then generates this password right here that we can then copy and then use anywhere. Or up here on the top, we hit new password. It takes us back here to generate a new password. Let's go ahead and get started. So here I have an empty project, and we can go ahead and use this to build out our password generator. First things I'm gonna do is open this folder, open in terminal, and right here, I'll make it a little bigger. And the first thing we'll do is we're gonna go ahead and create a virtual environment. So we'll do virtual env, and we can go to source env bin/activate to activate that virtual environment. And now we can go ahead and pip install Django. And now we have Django installed. We can go ahead and start a new Django project. So Django-admin start project, and we'll call this one just pass generator. And now we can go ahead and see our pass generator folder there. We can cd into it, and we can see our manage.py and our root folder there for our project. I can go ahead now and run python 3 manage.py start app, and we'll create an app. We'll call it PassGen. And now we should see password generator as well as PassGen, and now we should be ready to go. So of course, first to set up, let's go into our password generator folder here, password generator, settings.py, and add the PassGen to our installed apps. So right here, we'll do PassGen. And now we should be ready to get started. So just to make sure everything's working, I'm going to go ahead and run a python 3 manage.py migrate, and then run a python 3 manage.py run server. There's a page here, and we should see our default app here. Okay, so now everything's working. Now we can go ahead and get started. So let's start by building a view. So we'll go into our PassGen app here, and we'll go into our views, and we'll create one view. So all we're gonna have is just one view that has a get and a post method. The get to show the form before we submit it, and the post will show the form and generate the password after we submit the form. So I'm gonna use a class-based view for this. So we'll create a class index, and we're gonna inherit from view. Now we need to import this from Django.views import view. And now inside of here, we'll have two methods, def get, passing in self and requests. And then we'll have a def post, once again, passing in self and requests. And for now, we'll put pass just so we don't have to worry about it failing for now. And now let's go ahead and start with our get view here. So all we want to do here is we're going to create a form, which we'll create here in a second, and we want to add it to the context and render a template. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and just return render a template, and we'll come back to the form here in a little bit. So return render requests, not in quotes though. Let's fix that. Requests, and then we'll pass in passgen/index.html. We'll make that here in a second. And for now, we'll just do nothing else, and we'll save that. Now we want to go ahead and make this file. So inside of our PassGen folder here, we'll create a new folder. We'll call this templates. Inside of templates, we're going to create another folder inside of here, and we're going to call this PassGen. And this will be just the default location, so you don't have to set anything else up. And now inside of here, we can go ahead and save this as index.html. Now we could create like a base and extend this from the base template, but for this example, since we're only going to have two templates, this will be fine. Let's go ahead and start by generating a new file here. And so there's our default file. We'll change the title here just to be like password generator. And then just for now, just to test that things are working, I'm going to create an H1. I'm going to put in a password generator. Okay, now let's go ahead and actually render this template. So we have our view set up, but we don't have any URL set up yet. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to go into my root folder here to our URLs, and I'm going to go ahead and import here at the top from PassGen dot views import index. I'll add a path here, and then inside of here, I'm gonna do an empty string, do index.as underscore view, and then do a name equaling index. We'll save that. And now we go to the root of our project here, just our base URL, in this case, localhost 8000. We should load this index file. There's the page here, and now we're getting our password generated file loading. So now we know we're correctly loading our templates and everything's set up and working. And we have our first view and URL pattern set up as well. Now we can go ahead and take this step further, and we can go ahead and create our form that we're going to show. So that form will have like the range and the different select checkboxes that we can set our options with. So to create a form in Django, what we'll do is we'll create a new file inside of our PassGen folder, and we'll save this as just forms.py. And this will be require some customization. So let's start with just our basic form and then worry about the customizations from there. So if we'll import from Django, import forms, and then we'll go to create a class, PassGen form. So here from forms.form, and this form will need a few different things. First thing we'll have is a length, and this will be our integer field, and we'll set that to be a range input here as well. So what we'll do is we'll create a length variable equal to forms.integer field. And inside of here, we can go ahead and pass in a label equaling to password length. And we'll set required equal to true. And then we will go ahead and set the widget equaling to, and now we need to create a range input widget. And so the easiest way to do this will be to create a custom class up here, class range input, and then we'll go ahead and inherit from number input, which we can import up here at the top. So we can import from Django.forms.widgets import number input, and then we can go ahead and set the actual input type of our number input equal to just range, and that will create that HTML5 range input that we have available. And then we can go ahead and set range input down here, range input, and then we'll pass in a few different attributes. So attrs equaling a dictionary, and we want a few different things here. First, we want a min and max value, so I'll set the min value to 1. We want to go ahead and set the max value as well, so we'll set the max value to 64. You can set that to a different number if you like to, but I'm going to keep it 64 for now. Next, we want to set a class, and this will be used for CSS styling later. And we'll set it to range, and then we're going to go ahead and do an ID. Set that to a length range input, and we'll use the ID later as well. But for now, that's all we need. Next, we want to add a include symbols, and this will be our checkbox to include symbols inside of our password. And this will be just a Boolean field, so forms.Boolean field, and we'll set the widget to be a checkbox. First, we'll set a label though, and this will be equal to include symbols. And then I want to go ahead and put some examples in here. So we'll do, I guess, at and $, exclamation point, £, question mark. And then we're going to go ahead and add required equaling false. And then we'll set the widget equaling to forms.checkbox input. And then we're going to go ahead and put a class on this as well. So ATRS equaling a dictionary, setting a class equaling to checkbox input. And then we have these set up. Next, we want to go ahead and set up include similar. And this is going to be very similar to this one up here. I'm going to go ahead and actually just copy this whole thing down. And then we'll change the name here to be include similar characters. Similar characters. And then I forgot my closing parenthesis up here. But for these now, instead of putting these in, we'll put in some other things like we'll do e.g, then we'll do 0 and O, L and 1, and then like 2 and Z as our examples. And then once again, all that should be the same. We'll save that. And that's the very basic form we'll need. Let's go ahead and load this form in our template now. So back in our index.html, or actually back in our views.py, we want to go ahead and use this template, this form inside of our view here. So the way we can do that is we can create a variable called form instead of equal to PassGen form. And of course, we'll import that here at the top. From.forms import PassGen form. And now once we have an instance of the form, we can go and create our context variable. This will be a dictionary. We'll set the name of form to that form. And then we can pass our context into our return statement here, our render function. And now we have access to this form name inside of our template. So for a quick test, we can go to our index.html and we can go ahead and just create like a form tag. And we can go ahead and do 2 clear braces, type in form. And this will input a variable into our template. We're grabbing our form variable and putting it in our template. Come back here, refresh the page. And look like we got maybe an error. Oh, I might have forgot some commas or something in my forms. Yes, I did. Make sure we put commas after these fields. There and there. There and there. Let's go ahead now and try this again. And there we go. So now we have this very simple range input. We have 2 checkboxes for our include symbols. And we put include symbols twice. Let's change that label real quick. Include symbols, include similar characters. Come back here, refresh the page, and there we go. So we have this password link, include symbols, and include similar characters. Of course, this looks terrible, and we'll clean this up and make it look pretty later, but we have everything showing and working. Let's go ahead and also add a submit button or a generate password button to our index as well, just so we have that ready to go. So we'll go back to our template here, and then at the bottom of our form here, I'll create a button. And I'll put a class on it. We'll use this later. Submit button. And then we'll call it generate. We'll call it generate, or make the text on it generate, and close off that button tag. Save that. And now we'll have a generate button here. Now let's go ahead and make all this work, and then we'll come back and make it look pretty afterwards. So the first thing we want to do is we want to, on our form here, we want to add a method.post. And what this will do is it will send a post method when we submit this form. And since we're saying a post method, we also need to go ahead and add the CRSF token to this form as well. So just CRSF token right there. But now that we set this to a post method in our views, when this runs, we can make this run this post method down here. So when we hit generate, what we want to do is we want to get the data that we submitted in the form, the length, and whether or not we clicked any of the options. We want to check that the form is valid. We will then use those options to then generate some sort of string, randomized string, and make that the password. So let's go and take this step by step. So the first thing we'll do is get our form and get the data from our form. So this will be similar to the line above, be form equals PassGen form, and we'll pass in request.post. And what this will do, this will get the post data in the body that we're sending in through our form. And since we use a post method here, that will be the data in this form. Okay, now that we have that set up, next, the first step will be is to check if the form is valid. So if form.is valid, then we can go ahead and create our string. So we want to keep track of what characters are available. So if we Google different string functions, if I open up a window here and do Python string.ascii, for example, you can see these different constants available. So we have ASCII letters, which is both lowercase and uppercase letters. We can break them up into lowercase, uppercase. We have digits, we have hex digits, all these other things, and we also have punctuation. This will give us our symbols. So we want to build a password that uses letters, digits, and maybe punctuation if they include symbols in their password. So we can use these string dot whatever, these constants to do this. So what we'll do here is we'll say available characters equals, and these will return a string. So we'll just go ahead and concatenate all the strings together to get one very long string of all the possible characters. And so by default, string.ascii letters and then string.digits are the two defaults, because no matter what, we're going to have letters and we're going to have numbers in our password. Next, we want to check if include symbols was checked, and if so, we'll add string.punctuation as well. And we can do this by doing if form.cleaned data include symbols. If that is true, then we can go ahead and do available characters plus equals string.punctuation. Now you may be wondering what this form.clean data is, and so to kind of show this, what I can do here is I can go ahead and do a print right here and print out form.cleaned data to show you what that will submit. Oh, I typed in my token wrong. Let's go back and fix that real quick, and also but CRSF is CSRF token. And also in our view here, let's go ahead and return render this template as well, just so we don't have any other errors down here. So we'll go ahead and put that right there as well, get rid of the context. And we'll come back here, refresh the page. Okay, so now if we click include symbols, we set a password link to whatever we want there and hit generate. We're getting an error, string is not defined. Oh, I forgot to import string here at the top. We got to make sure we import the string module. So we do import, it'll be here at the very top, import string, and I'll fix that problem. We'll come back here, refresh the page there. Set a length, checkbox, check that checkbox, generate. Okay, now if we look back at our console here, you'll see that we get three different things passed in. We have this length value, include symbols, include similar characters. So what we're doing is we're taking everything in our form here, our length, include symbols, and our include similar characters, and it's setting a value to each of these variables in our form.clean data. So each of these will have a value inside of clean data, and it's just a dictionary with the value. So we set the length to 46. We did check the include symbols, so that's set the true, and we did not check include similar characters, so that's set the false. So in the case of what we're doing inside of our view here, what we're doing here is we're checking if form.clean data is include symbols is true. If it is true, then we're going to add the punctuation. And so now we can do a similar thing to check for the ambiguous characters field for similar characters. So we'll do if form.clean data include similar characters. If that's true, then we want to go ahead and find all of our ambiguous characters. So I'll make a list of ambiguous characters. So these are the ones we want to eliminate if we check this checkbox. A capital Z, a 2, an L, a 1, a 0, a capital O, and I'm gonna go ahead and add a lowercase o as well. And you can decide if you want any other ones in there as well, but for now I'll keep those. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and remove all of the ambiguous characters from our variable characters list, or string, I guess. It's a string in this case. So do variable characters equals. And we can use the regular expression library for this. So at the top here, I'm going to go ahead and import RE. And we can do re.sub to substitute characters with just an empty string, which will remove them. And so we're gonna do something here that looks a little complicated, but bear with me here. I'll explain it here in a second. I'm gonna put a pipe character inside of quotes here, dot join ambiguous characters, empty string, comma, available characters. So that's how this line should look. It's probably a little confusing. Let's kind of break it down. So first, let's go ahead and look at the documentation for re.sub to see what we're doing there. So Python re.sub. And here you can kind of see on this website here, the kind of pattern we have. So we have some sort of pattern, what we want to remove. We have the string to replace and what we're replacing it with. And there's some other optional things we can pass in, but we're not doing that. So the string we want to replace will be the available characters. The replacement that we want to replace will be with our ambiguous characters, or it will be with an empty string, and our pattern will be the ambiguous characters. So let's go ahead and look at what we're doing here. So if I go ahead and just print out our this first part, a pipe character dot join with our ambiguous characters, and then we gotta make sure we checkbox include similar characters. So we'll come here and we'll checkbox that and we'll hit submit. Look back in our console here. What we're getting here is we're taking our list and we're turning it into a string here separated by this pipe character. So all we did was join it together into a string with all of our characters. And then we're taking those characters, and any of those characters will be replaced with an empty string if we find them inside of our available characters, which is what we're doing this whole line here. We're taking that string, and that's what we're checking against. Any of those we find, replacing with this, which is an empty string, and the string we're checking is our available characters string. Hopefully that makes sense. That's a little confusing, but all we're doing is getting rid of all of the characters using this re.sub function. And now with that, we should have all of our options set up. So the last thing to do now is just to actually generate a password. And to do this, we'll do this with the random module in Python. So we need to import that as well. Up here we can do import random. And then down here, we can go ahead and actually generate that. And the way we'll do this is we'll create a variable called password, set equal to empty string dot join. And once again, I'm going to go type this all out and then I'll explain it to hopefully help clear up what it's doing. But empty string dot join random dot choice from our available characters. And then we'll do for I in range form dot clean data length. So this random dot choice will pick something random inside of this string here. So we'll pick a random string in our available characters. At this point, we've either removed all ambiguous characters, so we've added punctuation, or we just have the letters and numbers depending on what options were chosen. But we're taking a random one, and then we're using this for I in range, this sort of syntax here, to then do it for every, do it a certain number of times. In this case, it's the number of times being the length we set from our range input. So if we set our range to 5, this will get 5 characters. If we set it to 16, it will get 16 characters. So we're just doing this random dot choice over and over again and joining it together into a string for the number of times that we set with our range input. So if I go ahead and just print this out here, print password, hopefully you can see how this is working. We come back to the browser here. And now if I set this, I can't see the number yet, but I can go this way. So I go to 0 and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll include symbols for fun. I'll hit generate, and we'll come back and here, and you'll just see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we have 6 right now. Oh, okay. So I started my count at 1. I actually put 6 here. It's hard to see right now because we don't have our number showing yet, but this is 1. So that's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If we generate that, now we'll see a string of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So now we're generating random characters based on the number we set inside of our range input right here. And that's all we need to generate the password. So if you just wanted to generate a random password, you're done now. Of course, this doesn't look very pretty, and we should probably show the password on this page. So now the rest of this tutorial, we're gonna make this look pretty, and we're actually gonna display the password on the page after we hit generate. So let's start by making this look pretty. So the way we'll do this is we'll go ahead and set up a static folder with a styles.css. We'll put our styles inside of there. So back in our code here, you could set your new static root and do things that way. To keep things as simple as possible, I'm going to use the default paths available. So instead of PassGen, we can create a new folder, and we'll call this static. Inside of static here, we create another folder, not a file. We can create another folder in here and call it PassGen. And inside of here, we can create a new file and save this as styles.css. And now just to test things, I can do an h1 color, set to red, just to make sure things are working. Now we can go ahead and import that into our template. So we'll go back to our index template here. And then up here at the top, we'll do it right above our title tag. We will do a link rel equal style sheet type text / CSS, and then href equaling our syntax here with the passing a variable, and we'll do static space PassGen / name of our file. In this case, name of our file in this case is styles.css. Okay, now we come back here and we run this, and oh, I forgot to load static. So back inside our template here at the top, we need to go ahead and add one more tag here, load static. Doesn't look like we're getting our red style here. And our is from 4.4 styles.css not found. Stop our server, we rerun it, come back here, and there we go. Okay, so sometimes when you load new static files, you need to stop your server, rerun it for them to show up. But there we go. So now I'm showing red, so we know our styles are being loaded in. And now we can start to make everything look better. So first thing we'll do here is we can go ahead and remove that red now. We don't need it. But now we need to go ahead and start making, adding all the styles in. So we'll start here by grabbing a font, and I'm going to grab the Roboto font from Google Fonts and paste that in here at the top. You can go to Google Fonts and find the font you want. In this case, we're using just the Roboto font, and I'm grabbing a bunch of weights so we can use those as well if we wanted to. Next, I'll set the body styles here. So do a font family, set to Roboto, and then this as well. Now we'll go ahead and add a font weight to it, which will be 300. And then we'll go ahead and add a background color of a slightly darker, kind of a light gray instead of a white. We'll do F8, F8, F8. We'll save that and we'll come back here and we'll refresh the page. And now you have the slightly darker background. Now we need to go ahead and start adding a bunch of classes to our HTML so we can start styling that more specifically. So I'm going to go ahead and run through this part fairly quickly because it should be fairly straightforward. It's just basic HTML here. So we'll go to templates, next HTML. And first thing we'll do here is we'll create another div up here at the top, add a class of title container, and this will contain this password generated title. So you can tab that in, come down here, and we'll go ahead and add closing div right there. And then we'll go ahead and add a div here, add a class of card. And this will wrap our form, so we can go ahead and tab in all of this. And down here, we'll close off that div. Let's go ahead and style now our title container. We'll actually add a class of title on this as well. So we'll go ahead and style our title container, a title, the card, and I guess the submit button. We can style that as well. So we'll jump back to our styles.css. We'll start adding these styles. So first we'll add our title container. and we'll add a margin of 50 pixels, auto, 0 auto. Then we'll add a dot title class here, and we will do margin of 0. We will add a margin bottom 5 pixels, and then we'll add a font weight of 300. And then we'll add our submit button class as well. And here we can go and add some padding of 8 pixels, 8 pixels, and then we'll do a background color. Now I'm going to grab this color I found ahead of time, 258EA6, which is like a bluish color. We'll have a color to set the color of our text, and this will be just a very light gray, EF, EF, EF. Add a border of none, and we'll add a border radius of 5 pixels. We will add a font size of 1 rem. We will add a margin dash top of 10 pixels. We will add a cursor, a pointer, and then we'll add font weight of 600, and then we'll add a transition to transition our hover effects. We'll add here in a second as well. We'll do like 0.03 seconds. Next, we'll add our hover effect. So submit button colon hover. So when you hover over this button, we want to go ahead and change the color. So we'll do a background color of 2FA7C2. And then we'll add our transition again here to transition between the two effects like that. Okay, now let's go ahead and add our card style as well. So we'll do a dot card, and we will do a width of 50 viewport widths. We will do a padding of 25 pixels. We will do a margin of 0 in auto. And then I'm going to go and add in some box shadows. I'm going to copy these in because they're kind of complicated, but just add a few box shadows. And then we can add a border radius of 3px and then a background color of white. Okay, so if you're not familiar with all these styles, I can go through some of them, but generally this should be pretty much self-explanatory. We're going to set the font family to Roboto, and we're setting this to a lighter font of 300, and we're changing the background color to a slight gray. We're adding some spacing around our title from our card just to make things spaced out a little bit better with our margin here. Then with our title here, we're getting rid of all the margin, then we're setting the margin bottom to 5 pixels, and then we're setting the font weight also to this lighter 300. For the submit button, the general button styles don't look that great, so a good way to fix them is add some padding, change the background color, and those sorts of things. So we add some padding, set these background color, and then the color of the text with this line here. Got rid of the default border and added this border radius to kind of round the corners. Made the font size 1 rem. Added some margin to the top to give space from our button from our inputs. Made the cursor a pointer, so when you hover over it, it turns into a cursor instead of just this sort of pointer cursor you get normally. And then we set a very heavy font weight of 600, and this transition will transition the colors and make it a smooth transition between our lighter and darker colors when we hover over it. And then with the colon hover, we're changing effects when we hover over it, making the color a little lighter. Finally, we worked on our card here, 50 viewport widths. If you're not familiar with this, 50 viewport widths will take the variable screen width and get 50% of that. So it will get half of whatever screen size is available. Setting some padding, some margin, doing these box shadows. If you want to generate box shadows, doing those through some sort of online generator is the easiest way to do it. That's usually what I do. And so you can get that and then copy in the code from there. Once again, we added some rounding quarters here and a color of white. Let's take a look at this now and see what this looks like. And so now you'll see here we have things looking a lot better. Our button looks a lot better and all this sort of thing. And one issue you do have here, though, is this is still pushed to the left. We want this to be over here, lined up with this here. So how can we do that? Well, if we jump back into our code here, looking at index.html, we have this title container that has our title in it. So what we can do is we can just set this title container width to be the same as this card width, which is 50 viewport width. So we go ahead and just copy that, come back up here, paste that in there and save that. Come back here, refresh the page, and now it moves it over, over our card here. Okay, perfect. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and style our checkboxes, style our inputs, and those sorts of things. Now, styling a range input can get kind of complicated. I found this website that'd be very useful if you want to do so, cssportal.com. And it gives you some different presets of where you can start. So I started with this one here, and you can click on these and it'll give you the code for them. So if you click on this one, it'll give you the code here. Now you could copy this directly in and it'll work fine. I changed the colors for this example. So if you want to get those exact colors, you can find this in the GitHub repo in the description below, or you can just copy this whole thing here and paste it in. But this makes it much easier to generate these range components because there's quite a bit of styling here. I don't want to type all this out manually. It would take a while, and this video is already getting kind of long. So I'd rather just go ahead and copy that in. So I'm going to do that real quick. Once again, you can get it in the description if you want to get it there, or you can get it from this website as well. Paste it in right down here, save that. Now we come back here and we refresh the page here. Now we get our input looking like we want it to. Okay, now once again, if you want to go ahead and style some checkboxes, this video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and copy in the checkbox styling as well, just because I want to save some time, because we still have to get to some more things. So I'll go ahead and just paste it in down here. And look at this real quick. You can see we're doing the same sort of thing here. We're getting this input with our checkbox type of checkbox. So we're getting every checkbox input and we're setting these styles. We're also grabbing every checkbox input inside of our input container, which we haven't added yet. So let's go ahead and actually add this input container first. So inside of our form here, we're going to go ahead and make a few changes here. So instead of just doing this form, what we can do is loop over all of our fields and wrap it in this input container. So we can do for field in form. We do a div class of input container. And then inside of here, we can do field.errors. And then we can go ahead and do field.label_tag. And then add the field here. Okay. Don't worry too much about this stuff here. This is just how we set the field up. We're just doing it manually instead of letting Django do it for us. Or we're doing it if errors, they'll show up here at the top. Then we'll put the tag here and they'll put the actual field next to it. Don't worry too much about that, but that's what you need to put there. Then we need to go ahead and close off our in4 here as well. Okay, now we'll come back here, refresh the page. And now everything's on its own line because we wrapped it in a div. It's a block element, so then it'll make everything on its own line. And we have these better looking checkboxes we can check as well. Okay, so now we're almost there. We have most of the stuff done here. The big, and actually now that I look at this button though, before we go any further, I don't really like that gray color. So let's go ahead and just make that change real quick. So on our submit button here on the color, we could try just straight white and see what that looks like. Just do just EE or FFF and see if like it's just looking 100% white. I think it looks a little better. I'm going to go with that. Anyway, now we have most of our form up here and it looks much better. We are almost there. Okay, so we made that white. Now the only other issue we have currently is our font is not being loaded in. You can still see we have this default font here. So let's take a look at that and see what might be wrong. So let's go ahead and grab that URL again. So we go to Google Fonts. We should be able to get the roboto font here again. Let's just double check that our link's right. We'll come here and we'll grab the import statement and we'll grab this little thing right here. Paste that in there. I think I know what the issue might be though. I don't think it's that. I think the issue down here is because I forgot to put a comma after Roboto. So we'll put that there and save it again. Come back here and see if that fixes it. Okay, there we go. So now we have our font looking correct. Okay, so now we're almost done. We have all this looking right. We can check boxes, we can generate a password, but we're not showing the password, and we have no way to go back. And our input here does not show the value, so it's kind of hard to tell what number we're on. Now, there's a lot of things we got to do to make all this work. Let's go ahead and first focus on this page right here, and then we'll come back, add the number here, because this will require some JavaScript, and it'll be a little more complicated. So to generate and show our password on the page here, let's take a look at our view and see where we're at currently. So we have a password, and right now we're just printing it out. What we could do is add it to our context and then just add it to our page there. So we could create another context variable like we did before, or inside of our function here, we can just create the dictionary right here. Since there's only one value, this might be better. So we do password and set equal to password. And now we should have access to this password variable inside of our template. So we go back to our index page here. And now we could put it in here, but instead I'm going to create a separate template and put it on there. So new file, save this as password.html. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this template in to start and paste it here, and then remove the form completely. And instead, 2 curly braces, password. Now we'll generate a new password. But we never actually update our template. Okay, so back inside of our views.py here, instead of rendering index.html, let's render password.html. Now we'll go ahead and generate a password, and there's our password. So now we have our password showing. Now we can do a couple of other small things. Let's go ahead and style this password a little bit. Let's also add a back button up here so we can go back to create a new password if we don't like this one. So we'll add that back button first. So the first thing we'll do is jump back into our password HTML template here. We will go to the top for body here. I'm going to add a link tag and class this being back button, and we'll style this a little bit. But I'm going to go add href. I'm going to add our Django syntax here to URL index. This will take us back to our index URL, which we named earlier in our urls.py. And we'll put new password. And in this case, also important note, this will take us back to our get method, which will be our index.html page, just to make that clear as well. But then now we go and save this, come back here. Now when we generate a password, we have this new password link here. We click on it. It takes us back here to generate a new one again, and we can go back and forth like that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and style that, and we'll style this password and finish this page up. And so what we'll do here is we will go back to our password HTML template. And the first thing I'll do here is I want to go ahead and put this password. I guess first things first, let's change this password generated title. We'll leave that as is. But what we'll go ahead and do now is inside of here, we'll put this in a p tag, I guess. And then we'll wrap this in a p tag. That, and then we'll add a class of password on this. And then we can go ahead and style our password class and our back button class. So let's start with the back button. So we'll go back to our styles.css. We will come down here to the bottom here, and we'll go to, okay, and we'll create a new class, .back button. Now, first we'll start by adding some padding. We'll add 5px, 8px. We'll set a color value of 2, 5, 8, E, A, and 6. And then we'll set a border of none. You'll notice we have lots of similar styles here. Border radius of 5px. Some of this is just removing defaults and those sorts of things. A font size we'll set to 1 rem. A margin of top we'll set to 50 pixels. A margin left we will set to 25 pixels. I'll set a cursor to pointer. We'll set a text decoration of none, and this will get rid of that underline. So we'll do text decoration of none. And then we can go ahead and do a font weight of 400, which will give it a slightly thicker font than everything else. And once again, we'll add a transition of 0.3 seconds to make a smooth sort of transition between our hover and our not hover effects. And then once again, we can add some hover effects as well, hover. And we'll change the color. And we'll just do a 31B0cc. And once again, a transition as well of 0.3 seconds. Okay, now let's go ahead and style our password field as well. Password. And we'll do a margin of 15 pixels auto. And we'll add a font weight of 400. We will add a word break and break all. And this one here may be a little less familiar. What we're doing is we'll have it wrap at any character, not only spaces. Since our password has no spaces, we don't want to only break it spaces because it never will. And then on smaller screens, it will overflow the container if we don't have this. So we want to make sure we put this so it correctly wraps with the available space. Okay, now we'll save those styles. We'll come back here. We will then generate a new password. And now we have this button, we have the effect when we hover over it, and this looks a little bit nicer inside of our password generator card here. Okay, so now we have all of that set up. Now there's one major style thing we need to add before we worry about anything else. And you can notice that problem we have right now is when we go into a mobile view, our styles aren't changing. So this is very small. It's just like crammed on the screen. And so is this. It could be better set up to take use of more screen space on mobile devices. And so we can go ahead and add that in. And to do this, if you're unfamiliar, you can add media queries inside of CSS. And this is set up by doing @media only screen, and then in parentheses here, we can set our properties. So we do a max width of 600 pixels. So what we're saying here is we're saying if the screen size is less than 600 pixels, I need a colon here as well, but if our screen size is 600 pixels or less, run these styles, and then we can go ahead and override any other styles we want inside of here. So for example, our card, we can make the width a larger amount of the screen by doing a width colon 85%. And then we can add our title container style, and we can set that width to be 85% as well. And so now instead of doing 50 viewport widths on screens 600 pixels or smaller, it's going to use this 85%. We save that and we come look back at our code here, refresh the page. We'll now see that this actually uses the available space on mobile, and then we go out of mobile, it still looks the same. So that's a nice way to set styles for mobile devices to make things look good on all screen sizes. Okay, so now that we have that done, and let's go to mobile, our styles are all set up. We can generate the password, it shows up here, and we have a way to go back. The only thing we're missing now is our kind of counter up here in the top right. And this will require a little bit of JavaScript because we need to kind of update it as we update the input. So I'll try to walk through this as best I can, but this may be a little complicated. Feel free to ask me any questions if you need help with anything, or watch this back a couple times. But what we're going to do here is inside of our index template, we're going to add a script tag here at the bottom. So if I go to index and come here to the bottom, at the bottom of the body, I'm going to add a script tag and put my JavaScript inside of here. And so what we'll do first is we want to go ahead and create, or we want to go ahead and get a few elements from the DOM. So I'll go ahead and get the slider first. I'll do const slider equals document.get elements by ID, length, range, input. And if you remember from our forms.py, we set this ID, length, range, input, on this widget. So inside of the DOM here, we can go ahead and inspect it and see that it does in fact have that ID on it. Open this up a little bit. You'll notice here, get rid of this stuff here, on this input type of range, we do have a length range ID, length range input ID set on it. So we have access to that, and we can grab that in JavaScript by doing document get element by ID and passing that in inside of here. If you want me to do more on kind of doing things with the DOM with JavaScript, let me know and I can make more videos on it. But hopefully that's at least a basic sort of overview on how that works, so you can hopefully understand what it's doing there. Next, we want to do is we want to go ahead and decide where we're going to put the output. And right now, we don't really have anywhere for it, but we can add something for it up here. So above this div, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a p tag. So right here, make sure it's not inside your for loop, make sure it's outside the for loop. But right here, I can add a p tag, a class of length range, and we'll add a span inside of there with ID equaling to length range, and we'll use this ID here in a second. And we can close off the span tag and close off the p tag. So we're just putting this element here that we can use and output our value to at the end. So we set this length range. We'll use this as a style here in a little bit. And then we have this ID length range, and we'll use this to actually grab our element. We could grab by the class, but I'm going to keep it consistent and grab things by the IDs here. So then we can go ahead and grab that output right here. Now I'm going to use let and not const here because we're going to update this later. But we do let output equal document.get element by ID length range, and that will give us our length range p tag or span tag there that we can now output our value inside of. And the first step will be just to set the inner HTML of that output element equal to the slider value. So we can do output dot inner HTML equals slider dot value. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and change the color based on that value. So what we'll do is we'll set a default color first. So output.style.color. And this will be a color here, which will be the green color. So we'll do 90EE90. And then we can do slider.onInput equals a function if this dot value is less than or equal to 10, then we want to go ahead and make it red. Else if this dot value is less than 20, we want to go ahead and make it an orange color. And then else, we'll go ahead, it's not red, it's not orange, it'll be green. And so this will be output.style.color, our green color, which is 90EE90. So if you don't understand what's going on here, what we're doing is we're adding an on input to our slider, set it to a function. So now this will get called, this event listener will get called every single time the input changes on our slider. And so every time the input changes, we'll run this function. What we're doing is we're grabbing the value, and we can get the value from the slider inside the function by using this dot value. So this will be the current value of the slider. If it is less than 10, show red. If it's less than 20, but greater than 10, show orange, otherwise it'll be green. So that's all we're doing there. And then we can go ahead and add in our colors here. So the red color will be output.style.color equaling to FF1234 zeros. And then our orange color will be output.style.color equals FFBF00. And then finally, the last thing we want to do is outside of this if-else sort of blocks here, we want to put output.inner HTML equal this dot value. And so we want to go ahead and make sure we not only change the color, but update the value every single time the input changes. Okay, so hopefully it all made sense. One other thing here to note that I may have not mentioned before, you can set any style in JavaScript by getting the element .style the CSS property, in this case color. We could set background color, margin, padding, whatever. So that's how you set those sort of things in JavaScript. And once again, if you want me to go through more videos on how to do this in JavaScript, I can. But for the sake of this video and the amount of time it's already taking, I'm going to go ahead and just keep going with it and go ahead and test this out and see if it's working. So we'll go ahead and refresh the page here. And now you'll see over here we have 33 and it's changing colors, but the value is not updating. So we have one small bug to fix first. And what is the problem here? Well, I misspelled output. That's probably what's going to cause it. So make sure we spell that correctly. Come up here, refresh the page, and try it again. There we go. So now the value is correctly updating and the color is changing every single time we move the slider, if it changes in the ranges. Okay, perfect. Now let's go ahead and just style this, move it to the right, make it bigger and some other things, and then we'll be all done with this project. Okay, so we'll go back to our styles.css. We will go below our .password field here, add a length range, which is the class we added to that span tag. And the first thing I'll do is text align right, just to move to the right side of the screen. We'll do a font size of 1.5 rem, and then we'll finally add a margin of 0. Okay, so what we're doing here is move it to the right, making it a little bit bigger by setting the font size at 1.5 rem and removing any default margin on the element here. Press the page, and there we go. So now we have this element over here, and now it changes as we update the slider. And that should be it. We can go ahead and set a number, 49, include symbols. We'll do include similar characters. Hit generate. And there is our password. Now, there is one bug I realized just now. We put include similar characters, but we look at the code of what we did here inside of our views.py. We are removing characters if this is set. So let's go ahead and change include similar characters to remove similar characters. Let's go ahead and go into our forms.py as well and change this to remove similar characters and change the label here to remove similar characters. And that way it now should function correctly. We check block this and leave that unchecked, and we'll now see O's and 2's and 1's inside of there. In this case, we got a 1. If we check this and set this to a number, we will no longer have any 0's, 1's, or Z's, capital Z, O's, and those sorts of things in here. Okay, so now everything's working as it should be. And that is it for this project. All the code in the description below. This was kind of complicated, so if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'll try to help you any way I can. But that's really it. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.